All right, people. Hello, people. This is the fifth episode of the Finding Grateful with Duane Heil and me, Jason Plasaros. That's my last name. Hello, Duane.
How you doing? I really, you know what? I didn't even know your last name.
I know. Who cares? And actually, you don't even know my first name. Actually, let me tell you this: Jason is not how we pronounce it in Greeks. I'm Greek, guys, so we actually call it Iason.
Okay.
So
Yes.
that's a proper name. And
That's
Iasis,
cooler than Jason.
yeah, it's actually cooler, and you can actually pronounce it, which is kind of, huh? Maybe I should actually call myself Iason to
Yason.
people from the US.
Well, you
Iason.
would spell it Yason then.
Y. Okay. Y.
If
Okay.
it, yeah, if you're going to read it in English.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, maybe I should change it. I don't know. All right.
Well, okay, so my name's Dwayne, but my middle name is Arthur, and Arthur comes from my Greek grandfather, Athanasis. So really, the intention of my name is Dwayne Athanasis. And
Good.
Athanasis means, to people who don't know Greek tradition, means immortal,
Mortal.
immortal, which is kind of fitting in a way for what's going on here. And because really what we're talking about, this whole finding grateful thing is rebirth. And it's rebirth, and it's also changing your mind, how to change your mindset. It's another how to change your mindset. And in my case, I have lived this heavily. I came from a place um, where I had a very stable upbringing, household, mom and dad always together. I had two sisters and a brother, and I had cousins and uncles and aunts, and you know, we lived in one place, and we had a second house here, and we had abundance growing up in Los Angeles. And so it never occurred to me for a second that I would end up being 53 years old after being 22 years of very committed marriage and raising three kids and having three high performing kids. I mean, I had a beautiful, ideal family. I lived on a beautiful ranch. It was a 10-acre spread in Central California, just 5 minutes from the ocean, in this valley that looked like the Garden of Eden. You know, it's like if you take a, actually in my little booklet that you're gonna sign up and get, there's a picture of my ranch in there, and there's a barn on there, and it's just this beautiful barn out in the country. It's this bucolic setting. All right, that was my life. That's where I ended up after when I was about 50 years old, just turning 51. I had three kids in high school. There was a senior, a sophomore, and a freshman. And the freshman was my son, and he actually had skipped a grade because of his academic abilities. So I think he skipped like the eighth grade or something like that. They jumped him from seventh right to ninth. And so I had three, and my senior daughter was the homecoming queen, the princess, and she was very popular with her friends. She was a very good student. They were all straight A students, and my middle daughter was aspiring to be an actress, and so she would sing, and she would also would do the morning news at their little high school, you know, so she'd get on the TV and read the news for the day. So the point is, they were very involved in their worlds, and they were successful kids, and they had a lot of friends, and we'd have parties at our house, and we would, I built this 10-acre ranch where they would bring their friends, and it was a great thing. We had a pool. I built a baseball field for my son. I had a vineyard in the back. I had a fruit orchard, you know, gardens and chickens, and I raised a whole family of peacocks, and we had 5 horses on the property. And I selected this property because I owned an airplane, and the airport was a couple miles away, and on final approach, you would fly right over my house, so I could look down off to my left side and see my property when I was coming home from my business trips every 3 days a week. I would fly myself around California, and I'd turn the big corner, and fly in and line myself up on there, and it would take me right over to the side of my house. And it was just great. I could look down and go, property looks nice. I'll land, pull into my own private hangar, lock up the hangar, jump in my car, zip out to the ranch. Time for dinner. I provided for everybody. My wife didn't have to work. She was all she had to do was manage the ranch and the kids and her friends and our friendship network and so on. It was an amazing, beautiful life. And I was just turning 50. I had just received my patent for manufacturing process. I received a process patent. Yeah. I had also married that with a patent on software that I had asked a guy to make and customize for me. He has the patent on the software, but I owned it. I had bought it from him. So I put two patents together to make this very powerful tool for manufacturing. And we were just starting to spin that up. But really, I made my money off building real estate. And I had accumulated a portfolio of, I think it was like 35 properties at the time. They were set up in a way that there was a lot of debt on them, just to the point where the rents would pay the debt. But to optimize, because debt from the banks is actually the cheapest financing you can get. So you buy as much of it as you can. And then I took that capital that I had, so I had an abundance of capital, and I would buy more properties. And so it was like this cycle. And then I geared it so that debt would start to be paid off when I was in my mid 50s or late 50s, around 57 to 60 years old. Those would start paying themselves off. And then pretty soon, then my income would shoot up because the rents were paying off the debt. So then the income has nowhere else to go except in your pocket. And at that time, I was like, okay, I've done this from the time I was really 15, 16 years old. I figured I'd be 55, 40 years, enough. And then I just managed my properties. So I had planned my entire life out. I worked very hard. I liked to play. I was into surfing. I would fly my plane down to central Baja, and I would land on this beach, this island called Isla Natividad. And it's very hard to get to. It's 6 miles offshore. First of all, you got to go to central Baja, which is a nightmare. You got to get over the border, and then you got to drive a day and a half. Half of that day is just through these bumpy dirt roads. It tears your car apart. Then you got to find a panga, a little fisherman, to take you out to the island, and then you got to walk a mile from there out to this point where the surf break is. Or if you have your own plane, you can fly direct from Southern California, whoop, land at the island, and they happen to have a runway right there on the beach. And where you park your plane is, and there's a picture of that in this booklet too. So yeah, I'd set this up, and this is how, when I did that surf trip 18 times. And so it was magical. I never cheated. I didn't have any other girlfriends. It was never a thing for me it just wasn't my gig. I was very loyal, and I was loyal to my business. I was loyal to my customers. I was loyal to my wife. And then one day, November 7th, 2012, I woke up on a Sunday morning about 7:30. And as I normally do on a nice Sunday morning, I rolled over and put my arm around her and snuggled it up to me, thinking that, it's Sunday morning, the kids are asleep. And instead of looking at me and giving me a kiss on the cheek, she gives me an elbow to the chest that I'll never forget. Wham! And fucking hurt like hell. I was like, what the fuck's going on? You just hit me. We never hit each other. My wife and I, never in 22 years. Never physically harmed each other. We had some arguments a couple times, but we didn't drink. We didn't get out of control. We weren't like the screaming couples. But that, amazing. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? And she says, I can't do this anymore. I can't stand this. I've had it. I want a divorce. So I painted this picture of where my mind was. I had planned out my future for the next, well, I planned that future when I was 25 because I read books by different economists. One in particular was Harry Dent. You can look him up. But anyway, he predicted where population flows were going to go, and I picked all my properties around that, and he was right. And so I owned a really good book of properties that were most were successful. I had about a 90% success rate. I lost on a couple of them, but you know, can't win them all. Which was fine. And my investors never gave me shit about it. They were like, well, okay, you made. Nah, you lost one. No big deal. I mean, they weren't happy about it, but they didn't criticize me. I don't think anybody could have thought they could do much better. And it was all cognizant, and I was on top of the table the way I'd run my business. So I had very good business relationships. So my wife, turned out she had been planning this for years. And what ensued over the next 2 years, I won't get into this right now, but what ensued was a horrible nightmare of lawsuits, being kicked out of my house, scared out of my house, really. She got restraining orders, like just for the asking. Judge didn't need any proof. He just needed to hear one party say, I don't want that person next to me. I want a restraining order. With that, he threw down his gavel. He gave me a 5-year restraining order. Just bump. And I was like, what the fuck is that about? And the way the court looks at it is, this woman doesn't want you near her. What if I don't honor her and I let you stay? There is no reason you should be near her, because she doesn't want you to be. That's how she feels. What's the downside to them, to the court? No downside to the court, no downside to her. It's only a downside to me, but they don't really give a shit about me. That's not their job to give a shit about me. They want to make it easier for the people in general. So if two people have been married forever and one person, the court's not there to protect me. It's to dissolve this relationship as expeditiously as possible. They don't say that, but that's the truth. And so if this restraining order can keep us, me away from her, whatever, it makes her happier, and then it's just that much more momentum towards us splitting up. So anyway, all these horrible things happened. Go through 2 years of nightmare, of basically getting a summons every other week for 2 years. Legal proceedings, constantly paying lawyers. It cost me $125,000 in legal fees by the time I was done. A lot. Yeah. I mean, the whole company dissolves. We start selling tons of those properties just to have enough money to survive. Our business stopped. I stopped. I decided to walk away from it because she wanted control. So I said, go for it. Knock yourself out. I'm not building this anything more forward. It was a nightmare from hell. And 2 years later, there's no business. No, I don't have a house. I am living on my own now in Oakland, California, instead of on this beautiful ranch. I don't get to see my kids. It's not that I was legally exposed from precluded from my kids, but they were just busy doing their shit, and they didn't really want to hang out with me. I'm not sure if they wanted to hang out with their mom, because they were 14, 16, and 18. And now by that time they were 16, 18, and 20. And, of course, they went from having this very stable, beautiful life, every day, have friends over stuff, to having all of a sudden no dad involved. Well, of course, everybody's going to say, well, where's the dad? What's happening to the dad? And in fact, after all this happened, years later, I did run into some of the dads. And they told me, they said, we used to go to your house and everybody would say, amazing house, gorgeous wife. She doesn't really work. Where's the dad? Where's the dad? What the fuck? They didn't have a reason for it. No one would say anything. Oh, we can't talk about it. Secrecy. There was secrecy there. And by the way, this is why in my post relationships, if women show signs of secrecy about what they're doing, big red flag. Big fucking red flag. They don't tell you everything what's going on. We've talked about that, even friends, etc. People use, they don't tell you everything that's going on, and there's parts missing from their life, or they're doing something else at the same time, and they're not transparent with it about it, and they're not just like, hey, you know what? I hung out with so and so yesterday, and this is what happened. And they meet people that they should tell you about. This happened to me on a handful of relationships since my first, where, you know, dating a girl and you're together sometimes, and you dinners, and you go on little side trips, on weekend trips, as you do, and you have a nice life. Okay, and then during the week, you see other people, right? And there was times when the girl I was dating, she would see somebody that we both knew, and they would maybe have lunch or something, and then she would never say anything about it to me. Not like, oh, I saw Bill, or I saw Susie, or I saw that, you know, and we had lunch and stuff. Like that's you know, yakety yak. You just talk, share what's going on in your head. Say nothing. I find about it later. I go, why wouldn't you say something about that? Oh, it's none of your business. I did that with them. Well, yeah, okay. Maybe it's not really my business, but isn't that something you would just share? I mean, that, you know, what happened. So my ex-wife was expert at that, in building doubt through not telling stories. So anyway, the end result was I was totally lost most of all of my social relationships. And I was living now in Oakland, which was 250 miles away from San Luis Obispo. I was now 53 years old, and I really had no money to start with. I had owed my partners, because of the amazing accounting that my ex-wife did while she was in charge of the office. I owed them about $1.5 million, and I had no way to pay them back. I could have filed bankruptcy and just said, okay, I'm going to start over on my own. But instead, I said, I'm going to pay you back when I can, with interest. And so as a function of that, they said, okay, we'll help you. If you find decent development, we'll finance you again. Okay. So over time, I found a place to start building, and then I built, and I was able to pay back the $1.5 million, and I was able to become successful again. Really, what I want to talk about is the change of mindset from, okay, I painted this picture of my life. It was a beautiful thing. Properties, family, vacations, abundance, kids, circles of secondary family, friendship circles, trust, to having almost nothing at all. My ex-wife engineered circles of trust away from me by making up stories, basically. And if you read a book called The Art of War by Su Shen or something like this,
Sun Tzu, I think.
Sun Tzu. This is how, you know, like, oh, well, Jason and I are friends, and now all of a sudden somebody knows both of us as, well, how's Jason? Oh, I'm not speaking anymore. Oh, well, why? Oh, I really can't talk about it. It leaves them with this, it's just better if we don't speak about it. That's it. It is the worst. Because then they're like left, what's going on? Why? He's just not around. We just can't speak about it. but I had no other financial ability living down in the town that I was in San Luis Obispo. All of my business, well, it's in a small town, it's hard to go in there and make money unless you have money. If I go to the bigger cities, it's a lot, there's just tons more opportunity, right? Because I moved down to the small little bucolic town, small town, and I had my own money back in the day, and then all that collapsed. So then I had to go back to the city to make money again. That's what I had to do. So I wasn't there every day. And my kids weren't talking to me or seeing me anyway. So really, I mean, I tried. I tried for about many, many months to be there every day. I kept a second house in their town. I would drive back and forth that 4 or 5 hours, 2 or 3 days a week. Oh, yeah. Just to make sure I was there when they had any event that would occur. So if like my daughter was in a play or my son was in a baseball game or they were, or summer was starting or any event that where they could be out and around that I could maybe see them, I would say, oh, I kept an address. It was a little tiny $1,000 a month bedroom over some guy's garage down by the beach. At least I had a place I could call home. I kept that, and then I kept another place up in Oakland. I lived in a friend's basement, and I'd go back and forth between those two places in hopes of having a relationship with my kids. But they would never show up.
How old were they back then?
At that time, okay, my son would have been 15, 16, 17, and my daughter would have been 16, 17, 18, 19, 17, 18, and then she went to college.
So were teenagers, adolescents, young adults?
Yeah. They were teenagers.
So they had some choice in that. That's what I'm trying.
Oh, they had total
awareness.
Yeah, they had total choice, but their mother did such a good job in creating doubt in their heads. They had everything they needed from their mother because she got all the money and she got the house. They were well kept, well provided for. And she would keep, my ex-wife was very good at keeping them entertained, take them on vacations. She kept their friend network, together so that they didn't need me because they had my money. That's bottom line. Okay, this has finally come to light after 10 years. An event occurred the other day. I don't know if I should talk about this because it honors my daughter. But let's just say, and finally an event occurred where my daughter got to see my ex-wife's true colors. And as a function of that, it has brought her markedly closer to me. And I couldn't understand. I said, what happened? And I asked her enough questions and found out her mom kind of betrayed her a little bit because of something to do with me. He didn't want to help her because it had something to do with me, and it had nothing. I mean, she needed historical information about us, and mom's like, and daughter was like, selfish. And I never had that selfishness, but they didn't know that before. Anyway, I was ostracized from all connections, and my ex-wife did a very good job of doing this, and I'm not a politically minded guy. This is the problem. By me giving so much trust and power to somebody with bad intentions, if they want it, I put myself at a huge disadvantage in the event of a divorce. And certainly that's exactly what happened. And she was superior to me in court. She had the time to study and make attacks upon me when I was just trying to survive and work. She had the time and the resources to sit in the house and plan attacks, like throwing bombs at me. And I was just running back and forth and trying to hide. And okay, so we had jobs going. I was supposed to be the manager on the job. She would make sure that some subcontractors would or would not perform things that would make me angry, make me frustrated. Like she would start to direct the subcontractors, the framers or the concrete guys or the electricians to do things really that wouldn't be in my best interest.
Was he intentional about actually fucking up the whole business work.
She didn't care about the business. She didn't care about the business at all. What she wanted to do was frustrate me so I would just lose it and yell.
Can somebody be so strategic?
Oh, not only can they, she was multiple times.
God damn. I mean, she could be great commander, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by getting me frustrated, I mean, because like this framer, an example, there's this guy, Manny, who I hired to frame this building for me. You know what I mean by framer? He's the guy who stands the walls up and the roofs. Okay. You get big panels and you bolt them together. And I actually I owned another company that produced the panels. And the job site, I owned it. Like it was one of my developments. I even got the personal financing for it. I made a promise to the guy who loaned the money. Well, we had a legal contract, but he trusted me. I owned the property. I owned the building system. I was the contractor. I engineered the building system. And I hired this guy, Manny. He had a team of like 8 guys to come in with his muscle and nut and bolt it together. Okay. And so one day I show up to the job site and he had done things out of order from what the plans would provide. And then he actually called the engineer, the actual sign-off engineer, to come and inspect when it wasn't time. And in fact, it wasn't even his prerogative to call the sign-off. It's my job. He works for me, then I call the third party to inspect it. So they nut and bolt, they bolt the thing together, and then you have the guy who actually stamped the plans. The third party engineer comes and looks at he inspects all the connections and says, yeah, this is what I designed. I approve that this place is structurally sound, and you move on with it. And it's a good thing to have. But you don't call them until you're really ready for them, because if you have bolts missing here, and yeah, it's all part of the process, and you might miss a few beams. I mean, there's like 2,000 structural connections on these buildings, right? Right. So you're going to miss a few. Okay. And it's a one-off, right? And it's off a set of plans. And then I created the whole structure. And there's steel, like big, heavy steel beams and posts. And then there's wooden beams that tie onto that with certain types of very specialized connectors. And then there's floor beams that go on top of that. Then another set of walls, which that was my patent, these walls. And then the roofs. And it's a fucking round roof, round. Okay, with specialized curved wooden beams that I engineered. Well, I specified and had made, and they fit in there perfectly. And then you have, like, I built these special curved panels for this curved roof. It was an awesome building, downtown San Luis Obispo. Yeah. So he's putting this thing together. It's a complex motherfucker, you know. And this was all from my fucking brain, you know. And so I'm gone, running up and back and forth to Oakland from San Luis Obispo. And I come in one day and he goes, hey, engineer is here. Here, this is the punch list. Because like he was telling me that I didn't provide him the things that he would need to be successful. And I was like, why did you call the engineer? Like you could have just told me. And he says, he didn't say anything. He just stared at me. And I was like, who told you to call the engineer? Said, you're working with my ex, it wasn't ex yet, but my wife, my partner, you know, Wendell. You're working with her. Because she would have told you this. It's not your job. I go, you motherfucker. You fucking piece of fucking shit. Fuck you. You're fucking on my job, calling these fucking engineers. I got pissed. What did he do? He stood there. He stared at me. He goes, I've heard enough. Come on, you guys, let's get off the job. The next day, I get a letter from a lawyer saying that I am harassing the contractors on the job, keeping them from performing, and not providing with the tools they need to be successful. My ex-wife wants me eliminated from the job site. I was like, that was a setup.
You're kind of an engineer nerd. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe now you look like a fucking Hollywood actor, but in your heart, you are an engineer nerd. The
Totally.
last man I will expect to make mistakes is you, actually. Maybe you are rough in the edges, but making mistakes, you? No. Man, no. You are so fucking weird, meticulous nerd.
Yeah, totally.
So your wife exactly knew where to actually.
Oh, she knew the button to push.
Uh,
Like, you're accusing me of making that mistake? I don't make that mistake. What the fuck are you talking about? Right? Yeah. And so, and then the next day she presents it to the judge as though I'm a maniac. He's scary. And I spoke my defense to the judge, and I said, well, Your Honor, here's what happened. I laid out my story, and he goes, well, I had already given her management control, and if she, as a manager, wants to have a restraining order of you from the job site, I'm going to allow it. That's her prerogative. She can manage anything she wants. And I said, okay, fair enough. So then I turned in my resignation to the company, and that's when she went back to the court. And this is total contradiction. A month later, and she said, I want an order that says he cannot quit the company. He has to keep working here. And I was like, but you just got done telling them I was the biggest asshole and the worst thing to the company in the world. And now you want to write an order that I can't leave? That's psycho, man. So the judge wrote an order that said, basically, it's the slavery clause. So she had written a letter to the court asking them to not allow me to disassociate myself from the company. So I wrote a letter and said, I hereby resign as responsible managing officer because I had the license, because I can't go onto my job sites to inspect the things that I'm licensing. So you gave me a restraining order. She asked for a restraining order of the licensed guy to be on the job site. It's like suicide. I go, I have to resign. I got to take my license off this fucking job. So then she asked them to write or make an order to force me to not to be able to preclude myself from disassociating myself. It's psycho. And so the court wrote this. The court is unaware of any authority which would permit it to make an order that an individual may not disassociate him or herself from a position of responsible managing officer of a construction business. Ordering a person to continue to work for a particular company, despite their desire not to work for the company, has the ring of slavery.
they actually did write that? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's actually, I don't know if it's funny, but coming from the courts, right?
Oh,
Kind of,
yeah. And this guy already didn't like me. The judge had decided.
wow. That's
Wife,
even worse.
yeah.
I mean, that's even worse. He couldn't stand it. I mean, he
He,
couldn't stand you.
what the fuck are you gonna do? You can't force somebody to work. So then he says, it is the court's view that no authority exists to make such an order. Okay. So I was able to walk. Now, before that happened, my ex-wife's father, my father-in-law, he was working with her constantly to optimize the control of this whole divorce process. Everything from, making the kids unavailable to me to having the company, decision making and so on, and how she was going to approach, the legalities of the divorce, because he was expert at this. He was once a CEO for a Fortune 500 company in the United States. Although he had lost his job when he was 48 years old because he had said the wrong things to some of the investors. He basically insulted one of the Middle Eastern investors during a board meeting. He was a big investor, and their business was called Western Microwave, and they made bombs, like bombs that were dropped out of airplane to bomb the fuck out of the Middle East or whatever. They were a bomb builder. Western Microwave made the technology that would more accurately deliver bombs to where they're supposed to blow up. And he was the CEO of that company. So we called him a defense contractor. So they use better technologies. They put little radios in the head of the bomb, so you tell it to go, and it goes right there. And they blow the fuck out of it.
Karma, man. What about karma to work for to be in the head of such a company, man?
Yeah, he chose that. Right? And it was his whole life, killing people more efficiently. Well, last year's bomb, we'd only killed 30 people. This year, we're up to 50 per bomb. We're doing such a good job. Okay, what are you going to talk about when you come home? Right? And kudos. Hey, I feel for people. I know we have a military base, and I know we have to have defense. And, I'm not going to say, oh, no, don't make bombs, but don't get into court with these guys. And be aware of this when you're who you're dealing with. You know what I mean? Like, don't play a game of one-on-one with Kobe. Or Kobe's daughter or
Bless
whatever.
his soul.
Bless his soul. I mean, it's a bad one. I just saw a thing about him.
Yeah, I know.
But sorry about that.
Giannis. You can say Giannis.
Giannis. Yeah. Don't pick a game. You got to know who your competition is. He used to call me during the summer when I was like not performing as I used to, because I had no motivation. I wouldn't see my kids. I was in a really bad state of mind. I was scared. I was lonely. I was homeless. I was all these things. I went from having this beautiful home life to having damn near nothing. I had my car, stupid little. At the time, I was driving a Prius, which is it was, efficient car. Could, get a lot of miles a gallon, but it's like, it's not cool.
It's the least cool car on the road.
Pretty much
the least sexy car that exists.
It's the least sexy. I should have put like pinstripes or flames on it or something, or dildos all over it or something, just to like own it. So I took the family car, and that's what I was driving, back and forth and job sites and blah blah blah. So stupid. Okay, so he would call me. The father-in-law would call me during these times, and he would threaten me. He would say, look, you got to come back here. You got to do what, your boss, my daughter, says you have to do. And if you don't, you're going to be lucky to get out of this with your freedom. And I was like, freedom? This is a fucking divorce. This isn't a civil case. It's like, I haven't done anything to get thrown in jail for. And if I can't get up in the morning because I'm emotionally distressed and I'm tired or I'm just fucking not motivated, that's not punishable by imprisonment. I'm just a loser, I guess, or I'm self-protecting, or I don't even know if there's a word for it. It just is. You don't get to force somebody to work. And 2 months later, I found myself in court defending that exact thing. So this was a plan they had. This was all part of their overall plan. And so I was able to walk. I kind of got off the subject here of what we were going to try to talk about, is changing the mindset. So what I'm doing is laying the foundation for how horrible my brain was now, because I went from having this beautiful life every day of production, of being surrounded by family, being surrounded by my people who work for me and with me, subcontractors and clients and bankers and lawyers. And I had a network that I had developed over 20, 30 years.
And guys, before you continue, Duane, because I've talked with you, Duane, many times over when I was in your boat, when I was offline, and there are so many things that you not missed here, but there are so many things we can share over the next few months and years, to be honest, that so many details that you've shared with me, and I was like, holy moly. And I was like, is that even possible for humans to do that? And yeah, I don't know. It's crazy, and I know that we are a little bit out of time. So, and I know that it's a great segment for you to actually tell us what we are going to talk about next time, and maybe tell a little bit of a cliffhanger here,
Perfect.
because I'm yeah, yeah.
So what we're yeah, good. That's good, Jason. Thank you for redirecting that and putting a cap on it because I could dig very deep into the all the what was going on in my life and how you spend. I mean, I planned this since I was about 12 years old. I started working for my dad in earnest, and now I was 53, 50, 51, 52. Let's just say 40 years. Yeah. So for 40 years out of a 53-year-old man's life, did the same goal. I mean, I studied engineering. I worked in construction. Everything was directed towards that. To have all of that control removed from you and your kids. My mind was putty. And I'm going to leave you with this is that how I felt from that event. I used to say I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. And I really, really mean that. The pain inside was so excruciating. I would literally fall down and curl up in a ball at home when no one was watching. I just, the memories and the thoughts of all the loss. I, I mean, I would stand myself up and go outside and say, I'm gonna. And here I am today to tell you there is a way out. That is the story of finding grateful.
Well, that was a little bit too deep for me, my taste. But I will get accustomed to it. I mean, every time I hear your story, it's kind of it's as if I'm hearing for the first time. It's so important, people. So I hope you liked it, the story. I hope you got the message from this story, and stay tuned for the next episode, the 6th episode, people, because it's going to be fire. We are going to move on how Duane proceeded from this story here, what steps he take, baby steps, and what he faced for years, what you faced, Duane. You are here, so and of course you have a booklet.
Yeah, we have.
Let's talk about it again before it goes.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah. All right. Until you bring it, so people, there's a beautiful booklet Duane has created about all the buildings he made, and we have some text there for you to be inspired. Here it is. Go subscribe down below in our email list, and you can see.
Here's a picture that I'll just share with you right here. This is where the island I used to fly to in Mexico, Baja. You can see my plane on the beach there, and you can see the waves breaking in the background. That perfection, that was reality. That was part of my life. I would take my plane, I'd fly down there to surf. I would leave on a Friday, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, get down there, land on the beach by about 11. We'd stay till Sunday morning, pack it all up. We'd surf one more surf in the morning, fly home. I'd be home by 5, 6 in the afternoon, have dinner with my family on Sunday night. That was just part of my beautiful life that I had created.
You have earned that.
Yeah. So that was this is all about creating something and having it almost torn apart from you, as like the refugees do. Like I've really commiserated with these countries that have just been blown apart, like Syria. This is probably one of the more recent ones. It's happened for millennium. The countries have been shattered and torn apart. I think the Armenians happened in the 1920s, where they killed millions of people. It happens all over. It's happening now in Ukraine. Well, they're trying, but they're not succeeding very much. So, all right.
All right, people. Subscribe. Down below is the link. Go to the get to our email list. You're going to get a newsletter. You're going to get news from us, from Duane, from me, from here, from what are we doing. And this is our gift for now. So see you in the next episode 6. Duane, I'm signing off from Athens, and you are, again, where are you, man?
Oh, I am right now in Gamushlik, Turkey.
Right.
So I'll just show you here how beautiful this is. Here's the puppy head, and this is where we
All right.
fish
Not
there.
not a bad place to wake up to, right?
Yeah. Then here's the
Fun place.
boat. I'm in the middle of doing projects. I'm rebuilding things as you always do on boats. Okay.
Awesome. See you on the next, Duane. People, ciao, ciao. Subscribe. See you. Bye bye. Finding Grateful again. Stay grateful.